Hello. Welcome, everybody. Really appreciate you all being here tonight. It's a little bit of a lighter group than we're used to, so if you're at all interested, you can squeeze in, get a little bit closer up front. Maybe I don't even know if we need the microphone because it's a light group today, but we might just still use it anyway. How are we all doing tonight? Good? Awesome. All right, great. I want to kind of bring the energy up a little bit because some of the talks that we have today can be a little scary. And we're going to be talking about some serious topics, but I want you all to feel like you have some agency in the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis, and now especially around the holidays. It's not all holiday humbug up here. Especially when you get to the end, it's all a lot about things that you can do yourself. So I just want to go ahead and throw that out there. But there are a lot of things to consider when we are getting into the holiday season. And again, some of the individual decisions that we make and some of the presents that you're buying. Do you really need to buy yet another tchotchke? Just thinking about that, and even just considering the wrapping paper that you use to get presents to people. It takes about 50,000 trees to make the 4.6 million pounds of wrapping paper that Americans use every year. And half of that paper ends up in landfills, decomposing and releasing over 1,000 tons of methane, and that's every year. So think about that over a long period of time. It gets pretty scary. So methane concentration in the atmosphere has risen 63% since 1950, and globally trash is responsible for about 20% of that rise. So that's kind of some of the downer stuff that we're going to be talking about today. But again, there are a lot of hopeful aspects to this. We are making progress, at least as a nation, on cutting back on carbon emissions. And so we have a lot of opportunity to make some smart choices and give ourselves a better and more resilient future. A little bit about ANCA, for those of you who don't know. Our organization, Accelerating Neighborhood Climate Action, is devoted to helping neighborhoods and communities take steps to reduce our contribution to climate change, as well as to be better prepared for the changes that are coming. So tonight we're going to have 3 talks. I'll be the last one, but then we have George and Carrie, and I'm really excited to have them speak, and what they have to share is extremely informative. Just in the talks that we had leading up to this, I was kind of blown away a little bit by what they had to offer. So just a few little bits of information. Please hold all your questions until the very end. We will have time for a Q&A. We're not getting kicked out of here till 8 o'clock, so we've got plenty of time for questions. If you would like to, sorry, let me go ahead and take that back. You should have been handed a half sheet of paper when you came in. We would love it if you haven't filled one of those out before with us. Please fill it out and leave it with us at the end. Especially if you're interested in getting your neighborhood involved in some projects to become a more climate resilient neighborhood. We would love to hear from you. You can go ahead and check that box, or you can talk to me afterwards, and I'll be more than happy to get in touch with you. And we are also trying to make sure that we are waste-free tonight as much as possible. So we do have a couple of handouts, but a lot of the information that you may want to take away with you is going to be on the slide. So I encourage you to pull out your phones, snap a picture at any point in time of any of the slides that interest you. And last but not least, ANCA will be forming a Redlands Waste Watchers Facebook group. So if you're on social media and you're interested in trying to get waste-less, waste-free tips in your daily life, we'll be creating that, and that information will be available on our Facebook pages. All right, so if we're ready to get started, I'm going to go ahead and introduce George Christensen, who is a retired physician. He is a clinical professor at the Loma Linda Medical School, where he has received numerous teaching awards, including School of Medicine Teacher of the Year. So let's give a round of applause for George.
Thank you, Sarah. So, I am the bad cop. So I'm the one, just make sure this works.
Down here.
Okay. So I'm the one that gives you the scary news, and then the other two give you the better news about what you can do. But the reality is, yeah, that microplastics do make lousy presents. At the end, my last slide, I will tell you of a very much better kind of present that you can all be giving. This talk is going to be about microplastics and human health, which is actually a much smaller body of information than what I'm not going to be talking about, which is all the information that has been accumulating about microplastics and all the other animals on the planet and affecting them, particularly in the ocean. So, first, oops, just a sec. I want to mention. So where do these microplastics come from? Well, obviously from plastics. That kind of makes sense. But you may not know that many of you are wearing plastic clothing. So all synthetic textile fibers, polyester, rayon, things like that, are petroleum-based products that gets treated in the environment the same as any other kind of plastic. And in other words, it does not break down, it breaks up. These are things I just heard about. They're nurdles. They're used in industry. I don't know what they do, but they are another source of microplastics. And then the thing, again, I didn't know about, but somewhere around 80 to 90% of personal care products, lotions, face creams, toothpaste, and chewing gum have plastic in them. And in particular, in the lotions, they actually put micro beads, which are kind of halfway already there to being a microplastic, and those can break down. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, at the very end of our 3 talks, there will be an information slide, which will be lots of tiny print. Just take a picture of it. It's all these websites tell you how to find plastic-free chewing gum, plastic-free products, things like that. So we'll have that at the end. So the reality is that plastics and the plastics industry has been booming. Frankly, the petroleum industry is now shifting their focus increasingly over into plastics because they see it as a place of higher profit margin as the global demand for oil reduces, hopefully. But that's not, this has been happening for really, sorry. So plastic consumption has quadrupled in the last 30 years. Just in the last 20 years, more than half of the plastics ever produced have been produced just in the last 20 years. Now the problem is that plastics don't break down. They can be in the environment for 400 or more years, but they do break up into smaller and smaller pieces. And so a little bit of definition here. So, again, sorry, this is metric, but it doesn't make sense to talk about micro feet. So these are, so a meter is 3 feet-ish, a millimeter is 1,000th of that, and microplastics are defined as 5 millimeters or smaller. Most are way smaller than that. A micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter, and if it's anything smaller than 10 microns, can slide easily into the interior of cells, human cells, animal cells. And a nanometer is 1/1000,000th of a meter, and just to give you a feeling, DNA is 2.5 nanometers. Human hair is about 20 microns, just to kind of give you a feeling. So this is the size scale we're talking about. Now, in terms of medical concern, this has really shot up. So if you look, this is from a search that I used for most of this talk. So this is the National Library of Medicine search engine called PubMed. It's clever. And in 2018, if you just search for microplastics human health, in 2018, you pull up 54 articles. This year, as of November, there was over 500 articles. Now, anytime you see something like this, it means three things. One is the researchers are getting both interested and concerned. Two, their funding sources are also concerned, because that's what pays for the research. And three, it's too early to have many firm conclusions. You know, when it's just at the beginning of looking into something, what you have are far more questions than answers. And we'll see that. But there are some things I do want to point out to you. So, the first thing, and this is what a lot of the articles published to date about human health have just been saying, where are they? Are they in various organs, the microplastics, et cetera? And to date, they have been found in breast milk, in lung tissue, placenta, and we're going to talk more about placenta toward the end. In the baby's first stool, called the meconium. So the baby's first stool begins developing 6 months in gestation. So what this really means is what the baby was getting in utero and depositing in their GI tract. It's in the blood, and frankly, if it's in the blood and it's tiny, it'll be everywhere, because it'll get everywhere and it can slide into the cells. In sputum, which is stuff you cough up, I told my wife I should put just blue D up here, but, and in colon tissue. Those are the main places it's been found so far, but frankly, it's going to be in pretty much every organ. Now, how do we get microplastics into us? Well, there's three main routes, and they're not a big surprise. One is that, one is that we swallow them. So here's a slide showing people who, this is their stool, and you know, holiday time is not the time to talk about stool, but still, it's one of the easier places to go and look for microplastics. So in this study, these are people who mainly drank boiled water. I think this was from Indonesia, where maybe they have to boil their water, but and these are people who mainly drank bottled water, and they had more microplastics. Similarly, those who mainly did home cooking versus takeaway, they had more microplastics in their stool. So this shows that, you know, the kind of sources that we would think of actually make a difference in how much you get into you. We breathe them in. The microplastics break down and down and down until they become dust, and they are all in, you know, basically they're in this room. Fibers, microfibers have been found in Antarctica. So they blow all over the world. And so this is a, I keep doing that. This is a polyurethane, actually microfiber, found in lung tissue. It's like, polyurethane? I mean, I only use that for like varnishing things. But it turns out that they make fibers out of it that are like water repellent for like rain slickers and things like that. Now here, we're looking at the, this is a study that looked at facial scrub, which already has like 30 micron size microbeads on purpose, but what they wanted to ask is, do those break down in the actual tube just by being bumped around? And so this is an electron microscopy picture. This is just 1 micron, which is like really little. So anything smaller than that is a nanoplastic. And you can see there's lots of these teeny tiny nanoplastics inside the facial scrub that would easily slide through your skin into your body. One of the things, I won't go into too much depth, but in cell tissue studies where they sprinkle microplastics and nanoplastics on, one of their findings is the smaller the particle, the more damage it causes, and probably because it can insert itself in more places. So this is of concern. Now, again, the point that a lot of microplastics are microfibers. Even in the ocean, as much as 60% may be microfibers. And where do those come from? They come from textiles. In the textile industry, the fast fashion industry has shot way up in the last 20 years, and we're producing way more garments, and we're throwing away way more garments than ever before. So here's an example in the study where they were looking in the colon and when they were looking in the lung. 62% of all of the fibers, of the plastics that they found in the lung were fibers, and in the colon, that was almost everything was fibers. Now, in the other studies I've looked at, probably this is the more common figure, but around half are fibers. So, think about maybe not buying Uncle Joe another shirt when he has a whole closet full, because they end up just being thrown away and they get into the environment. So we've established that microplastics are in us in all of these places. Obviously, the real question is, what are they up to? Is this a problem? This is, in looking at what is being published to date, you find a whole lot more of these kind of articles. And what these kind of articles is medical hand-wringing. This is concern. All of these articles about, could it be in the brain? Could it be causing neurotoxicity? Could it be causing obesity? Could it be causing cancer? Could it be causing developmental abnormalities? Could it be causing changes in the microenvironment, bacterial environment in your GI system? None of these are human findings, but they're human worries. And that's what these articles are sort of putting out to their colleagues, that we need to be watching for this. And what are they basing these worries on is this. So you do not need to memorize this slide. But this is from a review article that pulled together all the articles that they could find as of this year. By the way, I'm referencing about 16 total medical articles. 12 of them were all in the last 2 years, and some of them just within the last few months. So this was just within the last few months. This is all of the findings in mammal studies, rats and mice. And there's a lot of technical abbreviations and things on this. The main thing is so this is where they gave microplastics MPs or nanoplastics MPs, and they either inhaled it or drank it. And where all the different organs, where they found not only that it went to, but it caused functional damage of one kind or another. And so brain, lungs, spleen, kidneys, intestines, testes, in utero, placenta, ovaries, liver, heart. Based on these kind of findings, that's what's stimulating the surge in, oh my gosh, could this be happening in us as well? And particularly as the amount of plastics in the environment is just going up and up and up. But have there been any actual findings, not just that they're present, but they're causing something in humans? Well, I looked through all 501 of those articles that were published this year, and I looked at all the review articles I could find for the previous years, and I found 2 articles that actually showed an effect in humans. Of those 2, the top one was really hard to draw conclusions from. It's kind of an iffy study. So I want to do a deep dive in the only study, really, so far, that has shown some effect that may well be meaningful in humans. So we're going to do a deep dive into this study, and you can see it was published in somebody that uses British language, so it's fetal instead of fetal, but it actually is a group in Iran that did this, and what they did was they got 43 mothers, and one of the ways that this study becomes easy to do is the fact that most mothers really don't take their placentas home with them. So if you go and ask them for them, they're pretty much likely to give it. I mean, they're not like coveting it. And so they got 43 mothers, And they did a survey of lifestyle factors. That's one thing. They looked at their placentas, very carefully slicing them up for microplastic particles. And they looked at a couple of aspects about the newborn babies. Not a whole lot, but a couple. So this is some information. They split it into two groups. One group is normal birth weight, and then there's low birth weight. Now, low birth weight, by definition, is babies that are in the bottom 5% of size. 95% of babies are bigger than them. You can see right away there's a little bit, eyebrow raising when 30% of the babies were in the under 5% category. So I'm not sure exactly if this population is representative, but it's the only one we have, and it's a small sample, but we should still look at what they found. So there were, the babies were not small because the moms were either teenagers or older people. That can affect it. They weren't small because of being born too early. They both had almost 40-week gestation averages. But the average weight here was 4.6, and this was 7.2. Now, I would personally like to strongly assert that just being small isn't necessarily bad. And so, I'm like under third percentile. But the other thing that they looked at with babies is this thing called the APGAR score, which is assessed at 1 minute and 5 minutes after birth. It's a general measure of robustness and wellness. It measures respiration, heart rate, activity, appearance, things like that. And you come up with a score, and the maximum score is 10, you want it to be over 7. And in fact, I mean, even the small babies averaged over 7, but not much over 7. And so whereas the full birth weight babies were in the 9s. So I would still regard this as concerning. And the authors posited that the microplastics, well, actually I have to show you the next slide. So when you look at and you divide it into these two groups, and then you look at, so now we've looked at the babies, now we're going to look at the placentas. This is the difference between the microplastics found per placenta between those two groups. So in the normal birth rate group, out of those 30 placentas, only 4 had microplastics in them, and that was a total of 6 particles. In the 13, again, it's a small number of low birth weight, there were 302 particles in those placentas for an average of 23.2 per placenta. And this is pretty eye-popping. Now, this is the only study, it's a small number, it needs to be replicated before we can really take this to the bank, but if you know anybody that's pregnant, I would, well, tell them something I'm going to tell you in just a minute. Now the other question is, so now we've looked at the babies, we've looked at the placentas, let's look at the lifestyle factor survey. Where might these particles have been coming from? Now, it wasn't a super extensive survey, but what they did find was, just like that stool study, if you look at bottled water and you look at mainly eating takeout, the percentage of mothers who mainly used bottled water, 66% of normal birth weight, 92% of small birth weight, 47% mainly takeout, 77% small birth weight. And they found that, like eating takeout or eating bottled water, I forget which was which, but one of them, if you just look at that, the placenta was 8 times more likely to have microplastics in it if they were on the upper end of using these things, and 12 times more for one of the others. So this is, again, a real concern that the environmental exposure that we are receiving may well be having a meaningful impact in terms of microplastic accumulation. Merry Christmas. So now it's not just bottled water and takeout containers. This is another study from China. And they did not look at babies, but they looked at the other two, a survey of lifestyle factors, and again, they looked at the placentas. And what they found, this is another very small study, literally just came out this month. And the one I just showed you came out in September. So this is really kind of new stuff that hasn't really had a chance to be double checked. But what these people found was that there was a clear increase in particles in the placentas of mothers who at least twice a week used a scrub cleanser or a toothpaste. I don't know why they didn't say one or the, anyway, so one or the other. Hot food held in plastic tableware. And I think the heat is probably a significant factor, again, with takeout containers. Ate fish or shellfish, we know there's a lot of microplastics in the ocean. You know, little fish get it, little plankton get it, and then little fish get it, then big fish get it, and then we eat it. And so this is not surprising. Drank more than 2 liters of water a day, or drank tap water as compared to purified water. Many studies have found microplastics in tap water, bottled water, just about every place they look. But the more you encounter plastics, the more likely you are to have it. In this case, in the placenta. So, this is, you know, when you think about, well, what can I do? You know, it can be overwhelming. These two pictures are from the internet. This is a wave of plastic. This is a pile of plastic in Chile. But this one was a picture I took at Costco. Once you start thinking about plastics, going to Costco is a very discouraging experience. There's just plastic everywhere. And so really, what can one person do? Well, I submit to you, that's the wrong question. Really, this is the question. What's your legacy? Is this going to be your legacy? What's your legacy? And what I mean is, so this is Hudson Walker, my first grandchild. He was born not quite 2 months ago, so I had to work his picture in somehow. But he's going to be, so what happens with climate change? It's very much like putting a cake in a 350 oven. Okay, that's where we are right now. And if you look at that cake 5 minutes into the time you put it in, it doesn't look that much different, so there's not much change. That's where we are today in the climate change picture. There's already more CO2 in the atmosphere than there has been in 3 million years. It's gone up really fast, and the climate hasn't even caught up with that. So it's like 5 minutes into baking. He's going to be 50 in 2072. He's going to be 60 in 2082, may have grandkids. What is he going to tell his grandkids about what his grandpa and grandma did way back in the 20s? And I want them to be able to hear that we were one of the ones who tried. I don't know if what I'm doing is going to make a big difference or not. That's not the question. The question is, I want to be one of the ones who tried. I want him to know that we are one of the ones who tried. And that, I submit to you, is the very best present you can give this holiday season. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate how George ended that, because I was sufficiently terrified throughout most of that. Thank you. And I think we can all agree that every single time we pass up a plastic water bottle, an angel gets its wings. So up next we have Carrie Keyser, who is the solid waste recycling coordinator for the city of Redlands. And she is going to share a little bit about recycling and some of the things that we can do in the city.
How does it sound if I go without the microphone?
Sounds good.
Does it sound okay?
Yeah.
Because I kind of like to talk with my hands, and so if I do, then I'm not talking to the microphone. And don't hate me. I have a plastic water bottle. It's what I grabbed out of my fridge on the way here, but I promise I do have a reusable one that I use next to my bed and in my office. But just don't stare at it. Don't look at it, because So again, we are going to be talking not your typical trash talk tonight. So we're going to kind of go over a little bit of details, a little bit of information, show you some pictures, talk about how your impact to the city. May I get by a raise of hands, is everybody here a Redlands resident? No, okay. So for those of you that are, you are part of my numbers that I will show you in a little bit. But for those of you that aren't, you are part of the city's numbers where you live. So just keep that in mind. Kind of our agenda tonight, we're going to go through an induction, some recycling 101, some trash facts, how to avoid recycling, even though that's what we're all trying to do, but we really want to avoid it. And then we'll go through a quick summary. So again, my name is Carrie Kieser. I am the Solid Waste and Recycling Coordinator for the City of Redlands. I was hired on Slurpee Day, so that's an easy way for me to remember. When I started, I'll just go visit a 7-Eleven and I'll know that that's my hire date. I work at a landfill. I actually work at our landfill. I sit in an office and the trucks drive up next to my office on the scale. The trash trucks are right there next to me. It's horrible. It smells horrible. It feels horrible. It's very dusty and dirty. But that's where I work because that actually exists. Right across the street from me is our wastewater treatment plant. So if I'm not smelling the trash, I'm smelling the wastewater treatment plant. So it's an amazing place to work. If I could figure out a way to build a barrier between myself and the wastewater treatment plant in the summer, I would, because goodness gracious, on a Monday morning after my office has been closed all weekend long, it is horrible, horrible. I do have 18 years of government experience. I did start my career with the City of Beaumont. I was there for 18 years before I left. And technically I live in Oklahoma, but I am working here and living here in the City of Redlands. I was the solid waste and recycling manager for the City of Beaumont before I left, and then I again have just come back into the recycling world. So I have quite a few years of experience under my belt, so we've got some good info here. Recycling 101. So what is recycling? It is the practice of collecting, sorting, cleaning, treating, restoring, and processing materials that would otherwise be thrown away and turned into new products. So that's just basically what we're trying to do, right? We're all trying to collect them, sort them appropriately, put them in a container, and hope that at some point they go full circle and they are turned into something else. So for those of you that live in our city, you should have one of each of these 3 containers: refuse, a recycle bin, and a yard food waste. And those of you that don't, you should also have something very similar to that. So what are we looking at to have go into our trash bin? A lot of people think that plastic is recyclable. It's not. It's really not. It doesn't really break down, and thanks to George, we just learned that. It doesn't really break down, and when it breaks down, it goes into our bodies. So it's not really a recyclable product. A lot of people think that the plastic bags that they're given at the grocery store, oh, it's plastic. It goes into the recycling bin. Plastic isn't really recycling. That's a trash product. So think of your trash as something that you want to contain. So all of your plastic bags, everything goes into your trash bin. So up here we've got, everybody thinks their Starbucks cups are recycling. They're not, because the inside is lined with wax, so it's not a recycling product. So you can't put that in. So everybody thinks, oh, it's great, we'll put them in our recycling bin. They're not recyclable. It's a trash product. Plastic bags, the ones you get from your grocery store, not recycling. Put your trash in them. You can also use them at some point when we go into the organic side. You can put your food waste into that. Beverage and food cartons, envelopes, styrofoam. Styrofoam is not a recyclable product, so please don't put that into your recycling bin. Plastic straws are not recyclable. So if you have a plastic glass that you go to a food place and you get a cup to go, maybe the bottom part of your cup is recyclable, but your straw is not. So those go in the trash. But nowadays we're trying to use reusable straws. So those, because straws end up in our rivers and our oceans and things of that sort. So we're really trying to limit plastic straws. Pet waste, that's a no-brainer. That goes into our trash bins. Hoses, hangers, And then broken glass, that also goes into our trash bin. Recycling bin. So there's a yes please and a no thank you. So again, think of your trash as something you want to contain. Think of your recycling as something you want to free. So when you're putting your recyclables into your actual bin, do not contain them. Throw them in there loose. Do not put them in a bag and then put your bag into your recycling bin. Recycling gets sorted and separated different than trash. Trash is taken to where I work. It is dumped, and I'll show you a picture here shortly. It gets buried. Recycling actually gets sorted. So if you have it in a plastic bag, those plastic bags then have to get torn open, and then they have to sort them, and then they have to do something with the plastic bags. But a lot of times, the belts that the plastics are going up, it can get caught in the motors of the bin, of the thank you, as they get caught. And so it causes issues at the recycling center. So free your recycling. Just put it in your recycling bin, free and clear, just open. Instance, lunch meat that you buy at the grocery store. It comes in a plastic, bin. Everybody thinks that, okay, it's plastic, it's a recycling. But inside of that plastic processed lunch meat thing, which we shouldn't be eating because it's processed and it's horrible for us, there's a little plastic bag. And everybody thinks, oh, that's plastic, that's recycling. The plastic bag is not actually recycling. So that's a trash product. So don't just think like, oh, that's a plastic that can go in that plastic container and that plastic can go in my recycling bin. There's a lot of things that we just have to kind of start looking at and really asking ourselves, what is this? What is this product and where can it go? Obviously cardboard we want in our recycling bin. Not broken down glass bottles, those can go in there. Aluminum cans, newspapers, those kinds of things can. Do not put in light bulbs in your recycling bin. They are not recyclable. They are a household hazardous waste. So please make sure that you are taking them to an actual household hazardous waste facility to be processed correctly. And again, no styrofoam and no plastics. More on recycling. This is kind of a small little screen to see. And I'll have to refer to my notes so that I can even read it. Oh my gosh. So again, we want to, if we have cardboard, break it down. You can fit more into your recycling bin if you make sure that your boxes are broken down. No liquids, no foods. If you're going to recycle a salad dressing container, it has to be rinsed out. It has to be a clean product when it goes into our recycling bin. If it's a dirty product, we've now contaminated that entire recycling bin, and that can't be processed as recycling. So it needs to be a clean product when it goes into the recycling bin. Again, no plastics, keep your recycling free. No food waste in your recycling, no plastics, no household hazardous waste, no batteries. Those again are a household hazardous waste, so please make sure those go in the appropriate container. And did we know that recycling just one aluminum can is enough energy to run a TV for 2 hours? It can power a 14-watt CFL bulb for 20 hours, and it can power a computer for 3 hours. So just one aluminum can actually do that if they get sorted and they get processed correctly. So little bits of things that we can do. Yard waste. So right now we are using our yard waste container just as that, as a yard waste. It's where our prunings go, our grass clippings, things of that sort, tree branches. But there's some things that we probably put in our yard waste container thinking they came from the yard that we do not want in your yard waste container. We don't want dirt in there, we don't want rocks in there, and we don't want plastic pots in there. So again, make sure that your yard waste is clean because it does get taken to a facility where it is then combined with food waste and it is turned into a mulch product. So we want to make sure that the yard waste bins are clean product, just actual Grass clippings, plants, sticks and branches, and leaves. Things that came from the earth. Think of it as that. Things that came from the earth that are going to go back into the earth. So we want to keep that product clean. Hopefully, my goal, first quarter of 2023, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this because you are avid composters, and I love that. We are going to be accepting food waste into our yard waste bin. Currently, we do not. In the city of Redlands, we have 3 drop-off locations. One is here, that you can bring your food waste and put it into our little handy-dandy container, and it gets sent to a processing facility that gets turned into mulch. Hopefully, again, we are working with the state. We are working with our facility that we take some of our product to right now to get their permit to be able to allow for a commingled product. What that means is that we are hoping that your food waste, because that should not be going in your trash, will be going into your yard waste bin. Again, that is something that we are still working on, but as time comes through, and passes, and we get the okay to start processing that, you'll be hearing all about that, and tons of information will be going out. So just, in the time being, take it to one of our little 3 drop-off locations and just kind of keep it out of your trash can to help keep the methane gas down. So, what happens to your recycling? And this is actually what happens and what it looks like to take your recycling to a facility. It gets trucked in, and it gets dumped onto what's called a tipping floor, and then a bulldozer comes through and scoops it up and takes it to a conveyor belt and drops it on this conveyor belt. And there is a guy there who is holding a hook. He's called a hooker, and he hooks. I found that out because I was like, what's his name? And they're like, he's a hooker. I was like, oh, okay. He actually hooks products that do not belong there. So that is his job, and he is a busy guy because I have stood there and I have watched him, and he just hooks things and hooks things. So the items are dumped onto a tipping floor, put onto a conveyor belt, and this is our recycling. This goes back to what George talked about. This is all of our plastics that we think is fantastic, that is getting processed, but it's not really getting processed. So it's pushed into the pit, placed on a conveyor belt, and separated. So how can we do better? How can we eliminate this? Because we shouldn't be dealing. This is a lot of plastic, and you figure all of us, we're just a small portion of residents here tonight. If you think about the number of people in our city who live here who are thinking they're doing great and putting their stuff into the recycling bin, it's all going there. And I promise you 50% of that is not actually recyclable. It's all wishful recycling. And that's what a lot of us are. We are wishful recyclers. We wish it to be recycled, so we're going to put it in our bin and hope that it gets recycled, that the recycling fairy is going to make it a recyclable product. It doesn't work that way. It's not how it works. So then this is this is what I have witnessed and seen at the facility in Fontana at Bertec. This is where we take a lot of our product. They're actual conveyor belts, and there are people standing there, and they are on both sides, and that conveyor belt is just flying by with product on it, and they are grabbing things. They're masked up, they're hard hats, they've got gloves, goggles, they are full tilt protection, and they are just standing there grabbing stuff all day long. That's their job. They just grab stuff all day long of all the stuff that should not be recycled, because again, we're wishful recyclers. We wish something to be recycled, so we put it in our recycling bin, hoping that somebody's going to recycle it for us. And then once it is handled through the conveyor belt, it gets spit out and separated, and then it gets turned into bales, and it looks like that at the very, very, very end. It has a very long process to go through to look as pretty as that. But that's typically how it ends, and then it gets put onto trucks, and then we hope somebody buys it. So you can't recycle your way out. So there is a Senate bill, number 54. It's a new law that requires most single-use plastic packaging and foodware to be reusable, compostable, refillable, or recyclable by 2032. So that is something new that is coming out that is saying that a good portion of our single-use plastics will have to be one of these things or multiple of these things by 2032. Recyclable is set, the meaning of that is set by the state. CalRecycle, who is my parent, if you want to call them that, they're who I go to for all of my advice. They're who I go to for all of my okays. They're my parent. They're going to set that meaning. So whatever CalRecycle, whatever the state says is recyclable, that is what will be deemed as recyclable. And plastic producers will be required to pay into a plastic pollution fund at the same time. So they're paying into this. So it's going to hit them in their pocket. So they're going to want to participate in this. I doubt that click works, and I meant to send. There's a fabulous YouTube that talks about this whole thing and what it looks like on the conveyor belts and what we can do. So I apologize, but I can definitely send that out. So ways to avoid recycling, we can conserve. If it isn't created, then it doesn't have to be discarded. We can create. We can use it over and over and over again. We don't have to just use something one time. We can reuse it, repurpose it, figure out different ways and use it over and over and over. We can reprocess it. We can keep it clean. Once we create, we use it over and over, we process it, we keep it clean. We can reimagine. We can become environmentally friendly, and that's what we do. We're using our imagination to repurpose and reprocess and recreate. This one little item can become a multitude of things. And then we just need to be better than those before us. So if we can do any of these things, then we can be better than those that came before us. So a little bit about facts and numbers. So this is a landfill. This is what is behind me. I watched the guys move this stuff, so it's very interesting. I wanted a tour of our landfill, because all of us, we have a picture in our minds, right, of what a landfill looks like. We've all created one in our mind, and I wanted to see one. I was supposed to go to one in early 2020. Well, we all know what happened to 2020, and my visit to a landfill didn't happen. So I had to wait almost 3 years, and I finally got a chance to go visit one, and it is, I don't want to say magnificent because that's really the wrong term to use for something like that, but it's the magnitude is what's so magnificent about it, because it sparked such a sense of urgency in me to see our landfill and to know that all of our trash is going there and they are burying it. And these trash trucks are coming in and they're opening their back ends and they are just dumping all of our trash that we're just constantly throwing into our trash cans, and it's being buried and into our earth. And there goes the microplastics, and there goes how it comes into our bodies because it's back into the earth. And so we're ingesting those things, getting into our rivers. It was fantastic to see, but it also just provided such a sense of like, how do I stop me from participating in that, because it's just so much. So a little bit about information and what it looks like, because we're in the time of year where we are going to start creating a lot more waste, right? We're having parties, we're having, more food than we normally do because we're hosting different things. And so these bars represent tonnages, and for refuse specifically, which is not that button, this button. So this is refuse here. So average monthly, this is our average for an entire year. This is our November number. So just in November, we're doing almost the exact same that we do for an entire year. So that's a lot of trash that we are doing just in the month of November. December, surprisingly enough, is a little bit less. Not a lot, but just a little. Maybe not as many parties because we're not having as much food, because you figure food is getting collected here too, because we're not really separating it out yet. Yes, people are using our 3 containers throughout the city, but that's not enough. I mean, we don't have enough containers to be able to really collect everybody's. And then January, and it's just a little bit lower in January. So for the average monthly of refuse is almost 5,000 tons, 4,873 tons. For the month of November, we're at 4,887. So we're actually slightly higher. We're just about equal, just slightly higher. So you figure that's a lot of trash that we are generating in just 1 month compared to a whole year. This little guy down here, this is per resident. So per resident of Redlands, they are participating 291 tons. Each resident is participating 291 tons.
In a year?
Yes, yes. So here's our recycling. So where are we doing our greatest damage? It's not in recycling, because we're not really recycling. We're doing a lot of damage to our landfills. We are putting way too much stuff into our landfills. So we need to really work on changing and tilting the scale to be more on the recycling side. So recycling, average, we are doing 803 tons. Average a year per month is 803. In November, we're at 758. So again, we're right at that same number. We're doing just as much for the entire year as we are in the month of November. December, amazingly enough, it goes up a little bit because people are like, oh, look at all these boxes that I got for Christmas. I can recycle them. So that's great. We're doing a little bit. And then we've got January. It's just a little bit higher. So we're still recycling. We're still in the mindset. Maybe it's the new year and we're like, oh, we want to be better than we were last year. So we're going to recycle a little bit more. But per resident, we're just a little guy. We're just a little guy of recycling per resident. So we're really not doing all that we can. We really need to do better. Down. Down. Up. Down. There we go. So, in summary, questions you kind of want to ask yourself is, where did you learn to recycle? What are you teaching? Where does this leave us? And what are the baby steps for change? So all of us at some point learned from somebody else how to recycle. Well, where did they learn? And then where did they learn? And then where did they learn? And then obviously throughout the years, things have changed. We have more regulations. Things that were once recycling are no longer recycling. Things that are once allowed to be in our trash containers are no longer allowed to be in our trash containers. Things that we've become aware of, the methane gases, the things that are going out into our atmosphere from our trash that are causing problems for our earth, those are now things that we need to be considerate of. So I would just encourage you to kind of think to yourself, where did I learn this? What am I teaching? You know, when I've got my kids next to me or my grandkids next to me, you know, what am I teaching them? Are we having these conversations? Are we continuing to teach them that really recycling isn't all that it's cracked up to be? It really isn't, because it's still part of the bigger problem. I feel like, well, my slides disappeared. No, it was my notes. That's what it was. It was my notes. I didn't prep my notes. Anyway, that's fine. So basically just kind of have more self-awareness, you know, look at the products that you're buying, try to not buy as many things that you think are recyclable, because they're probably not. CalRecycle is a great website to go to. We also have some information on the City of Redlands website as well, but CalRecycle is really the main, you know, person as to who sets the standards which we follow. So with that, that's it. Merry Christmas.
All right, if I talk without the microphone, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, okay. Good, thank you. Thanks, Carrie, because I didn't want to have to carry that around anymore anyway. So, all right, well, I guess I'm up, and I am not an expert in anything. I am not a doctor. I am not an expert in recycling. I am just somebody who cares a lot and is trying to kind of go on my own less waste journey. And so I'm just really happy to kind of share along some of the tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way, and actually some that I picked up brand new that I didn't even think about before until researching for this presentation. So this is kind of the fun stuff. This is the practical things for your everyday holiday and also for yours every day to make adjustments. So first and foremost, the goal is progress, not perfection. Let's not beat ourselves up because there's a lot of things that we can't control. We can't control how our medications show up in plastic packaging. We can't, beat ourselves up every single time we forget our reusable bag again when we go to the grocery store. But these are just the little steps that you can take, because every little bit does make a difference. So first we're going to think outside the gift box. Obviously we're in a huge gift giving time of year, and if your family is anything like my family, it's a competition to say, the more presents means the more I love you, and I love you more than that person. It's kind of obscene. And it's tchotchkes. It's little things that I don't even need. It drives me crazy all the time. So, as we're thinking about gift giving, I want to share with you guys the 5 love languages. Raise your hand if you've heard about the love languages. Oh, good. Okay, so it's going to be familiar to some of you. Perfect. If you aren't familiar with it, you can actually go to 5lovelanguages.com and take your quiz. Do the quiz with your loved ones and find out what their love language is, because most importantly about the holidays, it's not about what you want to give, it's what do your gift receivers actually want to get from you. It's kind of that whole thing about generosity, right? It's actually about what the other person wants, not about what you want to give them. And so of the 5 love languages, yes, one is receiving gifts. There are just a set of people who that's how they feel the most loved. But there's also quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, and acts of service. I am an acts of service gal, so if anybody wants to come wash my car, thanks. I will feel very loved. My husband is a quality time kind of person, so he loves it when he gets to sit there on Sundays and watch football and play video games, and I'm just hanging out reading a book next to him. That is like his ideal Sundays. So if you're kind of keeping some of this in mind, how can you apply that to your own life, and how can you apply that to Christmas or any other gift-giving holiday? So let's get creative. I want to this is going to be participatory. I want to hear from folks. So if you have somebody in your life who is a quality time person like my husband is, what are some opportunities of how you want to give them a gift, quote unquote, for the holiday? Anyone?
An adventure.
An adventure? That's a great idea. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? I'll start calling on people. You don't raise your hand. Make them a meal. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. I would probably put that more in acts of service personally, but that's still a really good one. Cooking a meal together.
Yeah.
That's quality time, right? That's a really good one.
Taking a walk. Or
Taking a walk.
being in nature.
Love that, yeah. So concert tickets, going with them to a concert, going to a museum, hiking. All of those are great ways to get together and spend time together. I think the next one I have up is physical touch, or it's going to be acts of service. It's a surprise. So let's go with physical touch. This is an awkward one. If you're not a touchy-feely kind of person and you're trying to get a gift for a coworker, let's maybe be careful on that one. But what are some ideas?
Massage.
A massage? Yes, absolutely. That's a great idea.
Getting spa day.
Spa day. Oh, wait, see, dang it. Oh, I caught myself. Okay, let's go. Oh, there we go. All right, so massage gift card. Coming up with a secret handshake with your best friend. That's a good idea. Playing a sport together. Go out and play football. That's a really good idea. Maybe not for everybody in here is playing football these days, but there's other things you can do that might involve where you can be more physical together. Acts of service. So sorry for spoilers here, but fixing something. I have a music bottle. That was a gift from my grandpa. It stopped spinning, like the little dancer that's inside the bottle stopped spinning years ago. My husband got it fixed for me. So meaningful. So meaningful. Cleaning the house. Wish my husband did that more, but that's all right. Planning a trip. Just something along those lines, something that says, I thought about you, something that's important to you, and I spent time doing it so you wouldn't have to. Words of affirmation. What are some ideas on words of affirmation? This one's also a little tricky.
You can write down, like some things that you think are neat about them, about
Yeah.
the person.
Yeah, writing down something really meaningful, something that conveys their importance to you. I love that.
Just thanking people for what they do.
Thanking people, yeah, absolutely. So creating a playlist where the lyrics of the song maybe speak to the person you're trying to give a gift to, making a card, so again, writing down something like that, giving a toast, telling a whole room full of people how much you love that person or why they're so important to you. These are all really great ways to have that spirit of generosity that are even more thoughtful than just buying yet another thing. But then again, all right, some people really still like gifts, right? So here are just some small ideas to think about. What if you are working with people who are gift receivers? Buying secondhand. There ain't no shame in the thrifting game, okay? I am a big fan of buying secondhand as much as possible, especially with antiques. You can really find something of high value and give it to them. Wooden toys. If you're shopping for little ones, think about wooden toys instead. There's actually even a line at Target that is wooden toys that are heirloom quality. They're gonna last. And so you can think about generations after generations of kids playing with that toy. I have a wooden rocking horse that belonged to me, belonged to my brother, belonged to my dad. My grandpa made it, and it's gonna keep lasting through the generations. Buying local. There are all kinds of markets around here. I mean, that was one of my favorite things about moving to Redlands is I feel like you can throw a rock and hit a craft fair somewhere. So I really encourage you guys to consider buying local, and so that way you're actually cutting down the waste of shipping, the cardboard for shipping, the carbon output of trucks hauling gifts all over the place, anything like that. Buying local is just always better. And actually, that's actually a good point to bring this up. In case you haven't seen it over there on that table, there actually is an alternative Christmas fair with sustainable handmade gifts and festive treats. So there's information on that if you need to do some shopping. It'll be on December 11th. So there's a little plug for that. Giving gifts or giving donations in honor of somebody. That's also a really, can be a really special thing. Again, I'm just going to keep sharing everything about my personal life with you guys, but when my husband and I got married, his best man actually made donations to a goat sanctuary on the East Coast in our name, and we got t-shirts, and I loved it because I love goats. They're just so cool, and that just made me really happy, and it showed how much he really understood us, and so I really appreciated that. And then, of course, going with the Secret Santa or White Elephant route. Instead of doing, if you have a group of friends and you all give gifts to each other, do a Secret Santa this year instead. Cut down just on the extra stuff you have to buy anyway. I mean, one of the things that I really do appreciate about when you're living a less waste lifestyle, it's also a more frugal lifestyle, which is really helpful during inflation. And just some extra little tips. So these are some of my favorite ways to go get secondhand items. For clothes, ThredUp and Poshmark. ThredUp is an online thrifting shopping site. You can actually send your clothes to them, and whatever they can't resell, they do recycle. It is mostly geared towards women and children, so apologies, men. But Poshmark is really for everybody, and both of those you can actually get like designer level quality products. These jeans, ThredUp, and they're my favorite jeans. For furniture, you can get really high-end second-hand furniture from Cherish and Kayo. Those are actually like some of the dirty secrets of interior designers, is going to get secondhand pieces from there. For electronics, Newegg does a lot of refurbished electronics, laptops, phones, tablets, etc. And you can get them for a really good discount, and they're high quality. For GameStop, go to your local GameStop in town. They actually do sell secondhand video games. So for the gamers in your life, you got any teenage boys or fully grown men who like playing video games, it's a good place to go. And then kind of for everything else, eBay is always great. Facebook Marketplace, because you can do that filter and have it be local, so you can go do local pickups. And this one is my fun one that I just found out about this year from a friend of mine, Unclaimed Baggage. It actually is a website where you can go, there's airports, they send all the unclaimed baggage to this spot, and they just sell it on retail online. And you can get phones, clothes, random things, collectibles, like all kinds of stuff that people just forget to pick up at the airport or don't claim when they lose their baggage. Really fascinating. Anyway, it's a good way to get some really good stuff. All right, but if we have to be Amazon shoppers, if we have to really do it, because admittedly, I have family all over across the country, and yeah, sometimes I don't want to have to pay for shipping and do the whole thing. So yes, sometimes I do use Amazon, I'm so sorry. But if I do, I try to buy it all at once. I get it gift wrapped. You can, if you look right here, this is kind of blurry, but there's an option when you go to make your purchase to do the gift wrap. That is 100% recycled bags, and those bags are incredibly reusable. If you are one of those people who likes to reuse your gift bags year after year after year, like my family, those things are great because they will absolutely be reused constantly. We have them from like 3 years ago. And then pick the Amazon delivery day option if you can. When you do that, they try to consolidate all of your shipments into one big delivery as much as possible. You can try to get fewer boxes, and you don't have, first of all, you don't have, the Amazon guy coming to your door like every day. But also, it really helps reduce some of the packaging and again, the driving around. Those tend to be the days when they try to consolidate all their deliveries for your neighborhood. Try to consolidate them, and that's why it's a specific day usually, like a Thursday or something like that. They're trying to consolidate their drivers all to only going to that neighborhood at that one time. So really consider that if you have to do that. Also, the good part with Amazon is a lot of times the cardboard has minimal ink or is ink-free. Ink-free cardboard is amazing mulch. Cut it up, throw it in your compost, or use it to line your dirt as weed barrier. It's incredibly helpful. Just be careful about the ink, especially if you're doing a vegetable garden. You don't really want all that ink leaching into your veggies, so just be conscientious of that. But it's a good way to use your cardboard instead of throwing it in the recycling bin. All right, wrap it up. So you got those gifts for the gift receivers you have to give a gift to. And so what are some of the ways that we can reduce some of the waste of our wrapping paper, lest we forget the stats that we threw out in the beginning here about over 1,000 tons of wrapping paper going into landfills. Gift bags are great, like I said, you can reuse them year after year. We have one in my family that my grandmother bought that gets used every year, and my grandmother passed away 15 years ago. It's one of those really sweet things. It's like the dumbest bag. It's like got the cheesiest little sleeping baby on it. And we always just kind of laugh at how hokey it is, but how much it reminds us of grandma. So that's a really nice thing to kind of pass that back around the family multiple times. Recycled gift wrap. So there are a lot of places that do post-consumer waste recycling paper, or gift wrap paper, which is really helpful. Cotton fabric. This is, you can see an example of this over here. It's a technique called furoshiki, which is it's just a really cool way of taking these square pieces of fabric. You really nicely wrap and tie a gift, and they can be really beautiful. For any of you who are sewers or crafters and you have lots of extra fabric lying around, this is a great way to reuse some of that fabric. You can kind of make some cool patterns and everything. And there's a lot of tutorials online about how to do different types of knots. So it's really kind of a cool project as well. And then using newspaper or paper bags. Like this is, inside out grocery paper bags, and you can make something really pretty. Newspaper too, you can find some really, interesting articles to give to your uncle that's different on the political scale than you are. Spark some lively Christmas debate.
Sunday comics are good. Sunday comics are
There.
good for that.
There you go, the Sunday comics. It's
And
perfect.
the LA Times is even putting wrapping paper in their newspaper.
Oh, are they? The LA Times is putting wrapping paper in the newspaper. So there you go. I love that. Yeah, and you can. And I think too, if you have any kids in your life, it's a really good project to say, okay, now like color the wrapping paper, like draw all over it, draw a Christmas tree and everything. So it's just a really fun activity for the family too. The biggest thing though is please avoid glitter, metallic, and plasticky wrapping paper. This is the stuff that cannot be recycled. Glitter is awful, awful, awful. Not as only just a microplastic, but it's like everywhere. You can't get rid of it. So just do everyone a favor and please don't do that. All right, holiday meals made smarter. As Carrie was mentioning, this is definitely a time for eating a lot. And let's admit, food can also be gifts too. I'm a big fan of, I have one big cookie baking day every Christmas, and then I try to go out and give it to the neighbors, and I save some for family. It's really fun. But one of the biggest things that I try to do is I try not to put it on a paper plate and wrap it in saran wrap and then hand it to the neighbors. I try to come up with a different way of doing it. Beeswax wrap, you can reuse it and it works for a very long time, and it's a really nice waste-free hack, and actually you can get it in like cool Christmassy and holiday themed patterns, so you can kind of go along with the theme. Putting things in mason jars, you can take wide mouth mason jars and actually fit small cookies in them and stack them up in a really cute way. Throw a little ribbon on it. Aluminum foil is very recyclable. As Carrie shared, aluminum's great, so if you have to do the paper plate thing, at least cover it in aluminum foil instead of saran wrap. And then exchange cookie recipes, or like some of the ideas over here, creating a little like hot chocolate, make your own hot chocolate in a jar, or doing all the dry ingredients for a recipe in a jar, and then giving that to a neighbor with like little instructions of like just add milk and eggs and bake, and really nice fun ways to give creative gifts that are a little less wasteful. Mindfully grocery shop. This is a big one. The farmer's market. We have an amazing farmer's market in Redlands. Definitely take advantage of it because not every town's got it. So really good idea to, again, shop local as much as you can, or participate maybe in CSAs. Buy as you go and meal plan. Be really thoughtful about how you're purchasing meals or how you're purchasing supplies for your meals, and not overbuying. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I mean, how many times have we been so ambitious thinking like, I'm gonna eat fruit for all 3 meals this week, and then you don't get to it, and then you have rotting fruit, and then you're like, now what do I do with it? But if you're more thoughtful about it, you will have less waste. Learn what you can freeze. I have been very pleasantly surprised about what you can freeze and have it last for a really long time. Not just, freezing a casserole or something like that for later, but even freezing some of your ingredients. How many of you have had tomato paste in that little jar where you only needed like a tablespoon, and then it sits in the back of the fridge and it molds, right? And you're like, great, that was a total waste. You can actually take that tomato paste, scoop it into tablespoon sizes, put it on wax paper, stick it in your freezer for like an hour, then consolidate it all into like one little Tupperware and shove it in your freezer, and you're good to go. And then the next time you need tomato paste, just go take what you need in a tablespoon size, throw it in, you're all set. Same thing with buttermilk. I love making cornbread. I love making biscuits. I don't do that all the time. So what I'll do is I'll buy that giant thing, because it doesn't come in a small size. Buttermilk always comes in that bigger one. I take what I need, I put a little clip on it, I stick it in the freezer. Next time I want to make cornbread, 2 months later, take it out, throw it in the fridge, let it defrost, and then I use the rest of it. Just some helpful tips. There's plenty of other really cool things you can do. Managing your leftovers and scraps. So as Carrie shared, there is the food waste disposal canister out in the parking lot. I use that all the time. But other ways you can manage some of your leftovers and scraps, you can do home composting, of course, which the composting education bit is coming. Did they already do composting, or is composting next month? It's coming. Okay, cool. So hooray! But doing some home composting is a great way of doing it. Also, using your veggie scraps and storing them all in a gallon-sized bag in your freezer. Or you can do that with chicken or turkey or just whatever leftover bits. Stick them all in a gallon freezer bag. When that bag is full, take it out, throw it in a stock pot full of water, boil it for a while, and you've got broth. I do that all the time. I keep tons of mason jars around my house just so I can freeze chunks of stock and have that going for a long period of time, and it's a good way to use up those scraps. Considering plant-based alternatives, it's one of those things that some of us meat eaters really hate to admit, but of course the carbon output from caring for livestock and managing meat and meat-based diets does add a lot of carbon and methane into the atmosphere, which is really disappointing. So you can make, instead of going like full-blown plant-based, you can always make small decisions. Maybe I'm not going to use real butter this time. I'll use Earth Balance is a really good substitute. Maybe I won't make my hot chocolate with milk, but I'll make it with oat milk. Things like that. You can, honestly, with hot chocolate, you can use any plant-based milk as long as you add some peppermint schnapps. I'm right there with you. There's also, of course, doing reusable bags is always a really good thing every single time you go. If you have a bulk section at your grocery store, I know, it drives me crazy that Stater Brothers has the bulk mushrooms where I can just put them right into my little veggie bag, my little reusable veggie bag. But I go to Vons and I have to buy the little plastic container. It drives me nuts. But still, just whatever you can do in bulk. If you want to buy, nuts, rice, whatever, there's a few places. I think Sprouts has a pretty decent bulk section too for some of these things. And then, of course, when you are hosting your parties, please use your standard glassware, flatware, dishware. If you don't have enough, borrow some from a friend. Nobody cares if it matches. But we really do care if you're using a lot of plastics, red Solo cups, or paper plates or whatever. If you have to use reusable because you're it just can't manage it otherwise, there's a lot of bamboo plates and forks and those kinds of things. I don't think they do cups, but you could at least do that, and it's compostable. All right, decorating. All right, tree talk. Let's talk about trees, you guys. Fake trees are not better. As much as we wanted to think so for a long time, they really aren't. We've talked about landfills, we've talked about microplastics. These things are walking plastic dispensers. If you've ever had a really bad fake tree that sheds just as much as a real tree, you kind of know how much of a pain in the butt that can be. And that thing is going to far outlive you in all of your Christmases. However, if you have a fake tree already, and you've already committed to using it, I ask that you use it for at least 20 years, because on average, that's how long it takes to actually net your carbon output for the production and shipment of that tree. So 20 years, just commit to that for your, if not a little bit longer. Live trees, however, of course, are a renewable resource. They are compostable. They're actually a really great alternative, but there's a caveat to that, and I'll talk about that in a second. If you can do potted trees, that's a really great way to get the longevity of your tree. You can take it and then plant it either in your yard or plant it somewhere else. There are some places that do tree rental, like potted tree rental. I haven't been able to find any in Southern California, sadly. I know this was a thing that I found when I was living in the Bay Area, but there are more and more places that are doing that, so please just keep an eye out for that market because it's brilliant. But a lot of times you get a slightly smaller tree, they come wheel it in on a dolly, drop it in, and then when they come pick it up, then they go take it and they go replant it, and then it can be somebody's cut tree the next year. Know your tree types. Buy local. Buy the ones that grow in Southern California. Douglas fir trees and noble fir trees, those don't typically grow here. All those pre-cut trees that you're seeing at Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever, those are usually all shipped from Oregon or Washington. Primarily Oregon. They do like the biggest Christmas tree market. So it's one of those things that you'd be able to cut down on your carbon output by getting a tree that's more local. I just did a cut tree, it was a Monterey pine. I'm so stoked. I've never had a Christmas tree look like that before. It's very bushy, long needles. I'm trying to keep my cat away from it though, because apparently too much pine can be bad for cats. Good to know. Also, this one is kind of fun, doing a wall tree. So during the pandemic in 2020, my husband and I were living in a very tiny little house in San Jose. We had a roommate. We were all working from home. There was no room to put a Christmas tree anywhere, but I needed some Christmas spirit that year more than any year before. So I took old scraps of wrapping paper and I created a big triangle on my wall. And I put thumbtacks in it and I strung twine up back and forth and I hung my ornaments from that. It's a small space hack, but also at the same time, if you don't think that you're going to be hosting Christmas, you just have a case of the humbugs and you don't want to do it, or you can't do a live tree, or you can't bring yourself to go get a plastic tree, which thank you. That is a really good alternative that will still bring some life and decoration to your home. But most importantly, if any of you are Seinfeld fans, you can always just do a Festivus poll. Festivus for the rest of us. Other decoration ideas. Pine cones everywhere. Nothing says holiday spirit like pine cones, and you know what? You don't have to buy them. They're just right outside. Just go on a hike and you will definitely collect some amazing things. You can collect all kinds of cut boughs and things that are just like pine branches all over the place, and use that to decorate your home. Strostern, aka straw stars. This is actually a very Nordic tradition right over here. This was something that I learned about last year, and you take wheat straws and you fold them and you bend them and you tie them up, and you can make really gorgeous patterns. There's a lot of tutorials online on how to do this, and it's a fun activity to do with friends or with family members, and if you take care of them, they will last years and years and years, and they're all natural. Lacquered food decor. So I've heard about this where people take like cookies or their popcorn strings, and then they lacquer them really nicely, and then again, lasting for generations. You have ornaments for a really long time. Plant-based candles. I just really recommend in general, if you can use a plant-based candle that's using natural scents, that's just better in general, because a lot of unnatural, or not unnatural, but like a lot of beeswax and very artificially scented candles do pump out a lot of yucky chemicals into the air, and then you're breathing them in and everything. Like some of them actually use formaldehyde and stuff like that. So really just kind of watch out what you're burning, especially if you are, if you're celebrating a holiday that is very candle-centric. Just really recommend try to use plant-based if you can. Or you can also make your own too. You can definitely buy soy wax and make your own candles, and again, another really fun activity to do. If you can't tell, the holiday season for me is a crafty time of year. Think heirloom quality if you are going to be buying Christmas decorations. I really liked this menorah up here because it's something that is streamlined, smooth, beautiful metal, and will last a really long time, and it's not so overly of the now that your kids won't want it, So kind of think future generations, think longevity when you are buying decorations. And then of course, secondhand and upcycled decorations. These are made out of toilet paper rolls, and they're pretty dang cute. And then just secondhand in general, hitting up a Goodwill right after Christmas, you will get all your decorations for next year, and for dirt cheap. So it's a really good idea. Again, just a reminder, the goal is progress, not perfection. Again, these are just all some of the baby steps. There are little things that I do, but then again, I'm not perfect either. I'm absolutely going to be shopping with Amazon this year, I'm sorry. But, you know, we all have to do what we can do, and just the little bits really do make a huge difference in the long run. So kind of taking what George and Carrie have already shared about what is the legacy that you want to leave, and how are you teaching your family and your future generations on how to celebrate the holidays. This is a good way to start setting some new traditions. Cool. And then we also have a raffle coming up. Do you want to let you know that
It's 7:30, and we're running over, and so we'd like to do the Q&A just personally. We'll be around if you have questions. We're going to go to the raffle next, but before we do that, whoops.
spoilers?
Let me go back. So, this, you can turn down the lights again. Anyway, just this slide was made to be photographed, not memorized. So I'll leave it up. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the raffle products, and then I'll come back to this slide and keep it up here.
Also, just want to put out real quickly, there's some fresh yarrow plants that you are welcome to take as a giveaway. They make really great drought-resistant ground cover. And they're just free to take if you want it. So take it away.
Okay, so for the raffle, these items were generously donated by Feel Good Market on State Street in Redlands. And so let me tell you a little bit about them. So there is a gift basket, and in that, in addition to lavender body soap, there's some cool things that avoid the use of a plastic container, and also avoid the use of transporting water. So if you get your shampoo in a bar, it not only isn't plastic, but they didn't have to transport the water of the shampoo. I've used these, they work great. And you can see my hair. Here there's a shampoo bar, there's a conditioner bar. Also a nifty thing, and we just started using this in our family, there's a little container of dishwashing soap and a brush. You take the brush, you wet it, you scoot it on the top of the soap and wash your dishes. It really works well. We've been using it, and it avoids buying the plastic container of dishwashing soap and avoids the liquid being transported. Similarly, this is a reusable pump container and tablets to make soap. So you don't have to keep buying those soap containers. And then in a similar way, this is laundry soap in a refillable bottle. And you can just take it, in this case, back to Feel Good Market, and they'll, obviously, you have to pay for it to be refilled, but they'll refill it and you won't have another plastic container. So let's go to the raffle. I'm going to move the slide back.
Is there any extra ticket? I'm going to get one.
And then I'm also on here just going to put some reminder slides up during the raffle. So.